Get a selfie stick, Roger.
Yeah, we are live.
Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, and as the timing is so strict at this Congress, we ought to get started. I'm Mark Watson. I'm one of the co-organisers of this symposium on the World Flora Online. I'm the co-chair of the World Flora Online Council, and the other two co-organisers of this session are Lauren Raz and Peter Wyse-Jackson, and sadly they're not able to be here today. But we're very excited by the enthusiasm for the World Flora Online at this Congress, kicked off by Sandy Knapp during her inaugural lecture, which gave a great shout out to World Flora Online and a call to participate. And I hope that this session will energise you and enthuse you to participate if you've not already participated. This will give a lot more detail to the online we were able to give during our workshop, which was on Monday lunchtime, hugely attended. The room was packed, and in fact people couldn't get in the room. So we're going to start off with Marianne Leroux giving a presentation on the Taxonomic Expert Network for the integrating taxonomic and floristic data into a global perspective, and the case of the South African flora. Marianne?
Good morning, and thank you for coming to attend this session and listen to my talk on the e-flora of South Africa, and, well, actually the flora of South Africa in general. If I talk about heuristics within this context, I talk about the checklist, which is a very important component of the e-flora, and then the descriptive component. Right, so everyone sitting in this room is well aware of this race that we are having to run to combat the loss of our plant biodiversity in a global context. And South Africa, like many other countries in the world, are trying to find novel ways of fighting the loss of our biodiversity, which is under threat because of reasons like urban expansion, over-exploitation, and climate change. And this requires, to conserve, this requires knowing what we must conserve. And this is what we are trying to answer with heuristics. Now, the South African National Biodiversity Institute is governed by the South African law, and we have to conduct And therefore, the E4 is a critical output, making plant information available, and especially to conservationists who use this information. So in this talk, I will explain to you, provide an overview of how we've come to put together the E4, how it is maintained, and how we've managed to align it within a global framework so that we can contribute more data to the world flora on the planet. Now, conservationists often come to the taxonomists and ask them, what is the name of this plant? And with more than 20,000 indigenous species in South Africa, it can become quite tricky sometimes to answer this question, especially with challenges like the decrease in taxonomists and also the amount of literature that's available, publications. Going through all these multitudes of publications to find the correct and accurate information. Right, so the conservationist asked the taxonomist, asked in general to have better access to information that can support and streamline conservation efforts. And this was heard, and the global strategy for plant conservation was established. It consists of 16 targets, of which the first one states that a global flora must be developed. And because of that, the World Flora Online Consortium was established. And in 2013, South Africa initiated an e-flora project, and simultaneously during that time, Zambia also joined the World Flora Online Consortium on behalf of South Africa. And in the next 2 years, following 2013, South Africa also developed our own national strategy for plant conservation, which is basically aligned with the global strategy. So our current state of knowledge, botanical knowledge in South Africa, is built on our forerunners. Taxonomic and floristic information have been collected since the late 1700s and early 1800s. For example, in the work of Thunberg, Mr. Dumas and Flora capensis, treating about 2,800 species. Following in his footsteps were Harvey and Sonne, with their Flora capensis, and the first volume was published in 1859. Unfortunately, the project came to a halt in 1866 when Sonne lost interest in the project after Harvey passed away. 30 years later, the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew resumed the Flora project in collaboration with South African and staff from the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew to continue the project, which was eventually completed in 1933, dealing with 11,700 odd species. Then in 1956, another Flora project was started, the Flora of Southern Africa, dealing with 5 countries within this Southern African region. It was estimated to be completed, or aimed to be completed in the next 40 years. However, progress was quite slow, and in 2006, only 18% of the then 24,000 taxa were treated, even though there was an opportunity to produce smaller components of the flora, published that in the Wyse. And then in the early 1990s, another project was started, where floristic flora components within smaller regions in South Africa could be treated. It mainly focused on floristic regions, for example, the Greater Cape floristic region, or at provincial level. These treatments were smaller than those of the Flora of Southern Africa project, and this is almost complete with the Flora of the Namakuru, which stretches across 2 provinces, the northern and the western Cape province, and then the Flora of KwaZulu-Natal currently in preparation. Then in 2013, the eFlora project was started, and we set the deadline for 2020, which was in alignment with the global strategy of plant conservation. And we quickly realized at the start of the project that we have a large body of existing information already mentioned, we collated the information from many different sources, for example, Flora's taxonomic revisions and monographs. Data are stored in the Botanical database of Southern Africa, or in short called Botanical. And then information is disseminated through the SAM Biodiversity Advisor and also the World Flora Online portal. Now, alignment between the e-Flora of South Africa and the World Flora Online is really, really important. And to achieve this, we are following biodiversity standards, and in particular, the guidelines that are provided by World Flora Online in the backbone and content data contributor guidelines. We structure or put together our data in the Darwin archive, and the data is linked to World Flora Online via World Flora Online unique identifiers, and we take that Darwin archive and submit it to World Flora Online via the Global Biodiversity Information Facility in GBIF through their integrated publishing toolkit. Now, I've just mentioned that alignment between the e-Flora and the World Flora Online is critical for a proper data submission or successful data submission. So first of all, we have to evaluate the South African National Checklist with the World Flora Online backbone to determine if there are any discrepancies. And these discrepancies that we find is an opportunity for us to improve our national checklist. It sometimes also highlights areas of research opportunities, and then sometimes we can also contribute to the World Flora Online backbone. And we try to resolve most of these conflicts. But even though we do want to strive for a perfect alignment, some conflicts remain because of the preferred opinion for particular groups taken out of each of these checklists. And that is not a major obstacle as long as that name is the name that is in our plant checklist. For example, if it's published as a synonym in the World Flora Online but accepted in our checklist, the data will still flow through against that name and be displayed under that name as we have submitted it, as long as that name is placed within the World Flora Online taxonomic backbone and it has a World Flora Online identifier. Okay, so in 2020 we managed to finish the first phase of the e-Flora where we were able to collect floristic information for every indigenous species in the country. And in 2023, the information is made available online in open access on the South African National Biodiversity Institute's Biodiversity Advisor. And here is the homepage of the portal, and you'll note that it provides information on other aspects of biodiversity as well. And here is a typical example of the landing page of a species treatment. At the top is the species name with residence and conservation status. Below that, you will find more details on the records that are displayed on the interactive distribution map. There's specimen records that are pulled through from all three Sandy Herbaria, the National Herbarium in Victoria, Compton Herbarium in Cape Town, and the Natal Herbarium in Durban. And then we also displayed specimen records from our data partners, in other words, other herbaria within South Africa. And then observation records, mostly coming from our naturalists. And then lastly, we have the uses tab, which displays known uses as recorded in literature, and sometimes also from herbarium specimens. And we've been submitting this data in versions to World Flora Online since 2016. This is just the homepage of World Flora Online. And here is an example of our data within World Flora Online. This is for our national flower in Pretoria. Right, so in conclusion, we have established, managed to create an e-flora within the time frame that we set for ourselves and by the global strategy for plant conservation in 2020. And we also published this information online on the biodiversity advisor. And with this step forward, we have managed to create a single portal that makes information easily accessible and make information available to conservationists, making the gap smaller to find accurate information, especially in a time when there's a need in taxonomic expertise. And then we've also managed to align the e-flora into a global perspective and making that information available via the World Flora Online. And hopefully these outputs will benefit conservation both in South Africa and globally. Going forward, we will maintain the e-flora based on the South African National Checklist and how that changes. And we will add descriptions for families in genera, naturalized species, and also for inter-specific taxa. We will continue to add known uses, and we will, of course, maintain the contribution to World Flora Online. If you have any questions about how we have aligned our data with the World Flora Online, you're welcome to chat to me afterwards or with my colleague Renal Cooper, who is the checklist coordinator in South Africa, and she's also giving this talk. You're welcome to come and talk to us afterwards. And I would like to thank everybody that's been involved with the e-flora project since the start. And thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria. We have 3 minutes for questions. If there's any in the audience. Any questions?
So I just ask you to have the microphone, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks, that's a really great platform. I was just wondering if there are any plans to produce identification keys too?
That is a very important aspect, and we have been talking about it, but we don't have any set plans yet. Within the biodiversity advisor, there's a hamburger bar that goes to identification keys. So whenever anybody does a taxonomic revision and have produced an electronic key, we try to list them there, but we don't have a key for the country yet. That will hopefully be in the future.
Okay, but that's a very useful cross-link then. Thanks.
Any questions? Maybe I have one about the sort of discrepancies in the local taxonomies which are favoured. Do you have a sort of resolution mechanism within South Africa to decide which of those conflicting opinions is the one that goes forward into the checklist, your checklist?
Yeah, so now it's really the best person to answer this. But we have a checklist policy that guides us on how we can decide. And if there is conflict, we have a committee
format, or CITES for short, aims to ensure that international trade in wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival. To manage and regulate trade in endangered species, these taxa are listed in one of three CITES appendices. And trade in listed taxa are subject to permits, certificates of origin, quotas, and non-detrimental findings, with the provisions and restrictions being the most strict for appendix 1 listed taxa. Many groups are included in the appendices via classification listings. In other words, a complete family or genus is listed on the appendices. A good example is the listing of allo species on appendix 2, which will include all allo species except those in the reservation statements. In other words, those that are individually listed on appendix 1 and aloe vera, which is not CITES listed. So as classifications change, families and genera could be split apart or lumped together. And these changes in classification have dire implications for law enforcement officials who need to implement CITES regulations, since it directly impacts on the names that appear on the permits and other documents for the trade of plants. The situation is further complicated if different resources provide different classifications for the same group of plants. Therefore, CITES designates standard nomenclature references to use for certain listed taxa, especially for those with higher classification listings. So in these standard references, they contain the lists of names that are currently accepted in those higher taxa, and this forms the basis for updates to the CITES checklist of species and the Species Plus databases, which are regularly consulted by those who need to regulate trade in international plant trade. So these standard nomenclature references are listed in CITES Resolution 12.11, and this list is revised and updated following every meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which takes place after every 3 years. So before we delve deeper into standard references and checklists, it's important to understand how the relevant species information is displayed to the end user. So as already mentioned, two important resources for the distribution of information on CITES listed species is the CITES checklist of species and the Species Plus database. So the CITES checklist of species is the official list of CITES listed species and allows the exploration of information on these species and their degree of protection. The information provided include the scientific name and its associated synonyms, common names in English, French, and Spanish, as those are the official languages of the Convention. But for some taxa, common names in other languages are also provided if available. It indicates the CITES appendix in which the taxon is listed, and the country-level distribution, because CITES regulations are implemented at country level. So this is the information that I've got thus far, the information that comes directly from the standard nomenclature references, or from the listing proposal if there is no standard references. This website also provides information on historical appendix listings, including reservations, annotations, and the level of listing, and links to identification materials for this listed taxa. Species Plus, on the other hand, is developed by the United Nations Environment Programme World Conservation Monitoring Center and the CITES Secretariat. It is designed to assist parties with implementing multilateral environmental agreements such as CITES and the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, with CMS for short. It provides a centralized portal for accessing key information on species of global concern. And it contains information on all the species listed on the appendices of CITES and CMS, as well as other CMS family listings and species that are included in the annexes of the EU Wildlife Trade Regulations. So on Species Plus, you can select for which multilateral agreement you would want to see the information in the CITES or CMS, and the information for the species listing is then distributed synonyms and common names of the listed species. The distribution tab contains geographic distribution at the country level, and for some species up to territory or province level if that's available. So these two latter tabs contain the information that's usually included in the standard nomenclature reference, and the references themselves are listed on the reference tab. So here you see the scientific references and also other scientific literature references that relate to the species name or its distribution. So the document tab contains links to the CITES proposals to amend the appendix, animal and plant committee documents related to the CITES review of significant trade process, non-detrimental findings, identification materials, and then an agenda and summary of conclusions of meetings of the EU CITES scientific review group, as well as any other relevant documents. So this brings us back to CITES standard nomenclature references. So as already mentioned, these references are used to update the taxonomic background of these two data sources that I've just shown to you. And these are crucial tools used by enforcement agencies around the world. So it's therefore important that the standard references are as correct and up to date as possible to ensure that the background of these resources also remain current. So through their nomenclature specialists, the CITES Plants Committee regularly reviews the validity of standard nomenclature references listed in Resolution 12.11 and then proposes updates to existing references, additional references, or the production of new references as appropriate. So it's crucial that all proposed nomenclature and taxonomic amendments and additions should not change the original intent of the listing, and that it should follow the provisions of Resolution 12.11. If the nomenclature and taxonomic changes do amend the scope of the listing, then an amendment proposal to change the appendices would also be required to be submitted and accepted at the COP meeting before the standard nomenclature reference can be accepted. So this does complicate things from a taxonomic point of view, but there are ways of dealing with this and to minimize the impact. But you have to note that the taxonomic and nomenclature wheel in the CITES environment turns very slowly. But this does also highlight why end-user consultation is important and why the taxonomic changes that we make as taxonomists and the classification changes that we make are not always that easy to implement for all end-users. So it's also important to note that all standard nomenclature references must be ratified by a meeting of the conference of the parties. So it's a very strict process that it goes through for acceptance. So standard nomenclature references for CITES can take the form of published revisions or other taxonomic works. There are customized checklists produced specifically for CITES purposes, or they can be time-stamped extracts from online data sources. So the minimum information that the CITES standard nomenclature should contain is the accepted names and full synonymy of the listed species, country level distribution, and then perhaps an indication of the appendix on which the taxon is listed. This is mostly only available in the customized CITES checklist and not in the other forms of references that we do use. So what can we do? The World Flora Online Plant List can play an important role as a consensus classification source that is curated by a global community of experts, and this can be used for future CITES standard nomenclature references. So timestamp extracts have thus far only been made from the Plants of the World Online or from the World Checklist of Plants or vascular plants, but the World Flora Online is equally well placed to provide such extracts. So furthermore, the World Flora Online taxonomic expert networks are ideally placed to produce customized CITES checklist publications. And in fact, 3 of the 4 CITES checklists currently under development is being produced by WFO 10s. The first is an updated checklist for the second is a CITES checklist for the use in the genus Taxus, which is being produced by the conifer team. And then the third is the CITES checklist for the large tree species of Diospyros from Madagascar. And this checklist for the commercially exploited Malagasy edenis are being produced by the Lebanese team. And several more CITES checklists are proposed for future development, where the World Flora online teams could actually become involved, as I also mentioned in the workshop on Monday. So in conclusion, global consensus classifications are crucial for the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements such as CITES. CITES scientific authorities and customs officials, amongst others, rely heavily on checklists to implement CITES trade regulations and to ensure that permits and other legislation correctly reflect the names of traded plants. The World Flora Online, and especially the Taxonomic expert networks, are well placed to provide a global consensus classification and to produce updated standard nomenclature references for CITES-listed species. The World Flora Online could potentially also provide timestamp extracts, but proper customizable functionality to produce such extracts with minimum editing after extraction is currently lacking. However, I've been told that this is definitely in the pipeline, and I, for one, really look forward to seeing such functionality in place so that we can produce timestamp extracts from the World Flora plant list through the web interface. Since law enforcement and implementation of CITES regulations, quotas, etc., have at a country level, it is extremely important to provide distribution of information at ISO country level and not at the botanical units level, as is often the case. So there is currently a lot of support and appreciation within the CITES Secretariat and also among members of the CITES Plants Committee and parties to the convention for the work done by World Flora Online and its collaborators towards providing a consensus global classification of the world's plants. And we should build on this and continue to promote and improve valuable resources provided by the World Flora Online and its taxonomic expert networks towards the conservation of the world's plants. And by doing so, it's extremely important to keep the needs of our end users in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronelle. Open the floor to questions, please. Difficult to see, so if you put your hand up, please wave it around. Please. Microphone's just coming.
Sorry, can you listen to me now, right? Sorry, unfortunately I arrived a little too late, so maybe you mentioned this, but I don't want to keep it out. So, how is Species Plus connected to World Flora Online? So, if I check in Species Plus, I will have the updated name of the species that I'm looking for.
So how it works is that once there's a standard nomenclature reference for the taxon, the unit WCC takes that reference and they update the Species Plus and the CITES checklist for species database. And so the taxonomy on those two data sources will follow what's in the standard nomenclature reference. So if that reference is produced by the World Flora Online, it will be aligned. But if that reference comes from somewhere else, it might not be aligned with World Flora Online. So I think that's why it's important to input into these standard references where you can. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I just noticed that on the CITES website, aloe was still classified under Liliaceae. So is the classification of families or orders a bit lesser concern?
Yes, so because it's basically just labels from a higher So it's lagging behind a lot. Like I said, the wheels turn very slowly. But there is talks of updating that family listings to which the families are linked. And I hope when they accept the other checklist that they will update the family listing for that as well. With a few other families also that doesn't align with FAQ or something, or the more modern feeling. But yeah, like I said, those wheels turn very slowly in that environment.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I have a question on the alignment between the classifications used in the different multilateral agreements. You have in Species Plus, CITES and the Convention on Migratory Species. I guess there are plants in the CMS.
See, this is just for animals.
Yeah.
But I think they can try to align the animal backbones of the two data sources as well. Because they also obviously use the standard references from the CITES perspective. I'm not 100% sure how CMS deals with their checklist, but I think there is alignment between the animals from those two data sources.
And then extending to other NDAs, other ways of sharing data, the classifications, the IUCN.
Yeah, I think they also rely heavily on what is in the checklist for species one, species plus for the CITES listings. And then hopefully for the rest of the plants they will follow.
There's no other questions for that. Thank you very much for the helpful presentation. So actually, thank you very much. Unfortunately, Alan Elliott, who's the Taxonomic Expert Network for the WFO Online, he's the Taxonomic Expert Network Manager for the WFO Online, is unable to be here today to give his presentation. He was struck down by COVID last week and just very disappointed not to be here. So he's given me his slides and I'm going to hope to do justice to them in the presentation. So this one is going to concentrate on the electronic tools that have been developed to support the work of the World Flora Online, particularly the Taxonomic Expert Networks contributing towards the consensus classification. Alongside the electronic solutions is also the social side of things. It's how we as taxonomists are working together, collaborating together, not just the tools that we're using. So hopefully this presentation will combine those two. I'm not going to say too much about the World Flora Online. You've already heard some parts about it in the last two presentations and earlier on in the week, but just to emphasize that it's a consortium and a collaboration, and we're striving to make this as wide and inclusive as possible. We have about 52 institutional members who are members of the consortium, and that's an open invitation to other institutes around the world and organisations to come forward and be part of the World Flora Online and be part of the management of the World Flora Online. It's completely free, no obligations to be a member. We have 43 taxonomic expert networks involved in about 700 individual taxonomists spread around the world. And as we said earlier, the World Flora Online was set up in response to the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation 2020 and has been reinforced by the Kunming Module Global Biodiversity Framework, which is going through the CBD process at the moment and should be ratified in November. And the World Flora Online, also the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation, is embedded within that not as a series of targets, but as a series of complementary actions. And amongst those complementary actions, World Flora Online explicitly mentions one of the very few organisations which is mentioned this way. So it's been endorsed by all 196 parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Our consortium is, as I say, 52 members and growing, and this is the logos of all of them. The data portal itself, you've seen some images of that in the presentations, was launched at the Shenzhen Botanical Congress in 2017 and had a revamp in 2021. Currently we've got 1.6 million names, 350 I forget the total of accepted plant names, but 1.6 million names and 350 accepted names. Of those, a great number of distributions and a lot of descriptive data, along with images. There are two other parts of the portal. One is the about pages, which gives information about the project, but also flagships, the contribution to the individual taxonomic expert networks. The 10s contribute, each 10 has its own page, so does each consortium member. The plant list itself was launched in 2021, and we're on to the June 2024 edition of that, and you've heard about that earlier. So the rest of my talk is really going to be considering how the taxonomic expert networks, the 10s, contribute to the World Flora Online, particularly the taxonomic backbone, the consensus classification. But it's worth noting here that some of those 10s also provide descriptive information. The Wyse is the example of that. They not only provide, and the Symposia, not only provide information for the backbone, but also for the content side of things, descriptions, photographs, etc. There's no one sort of consistent 10 in format. They can cover several taxonomic ranks, if you like. Most of them at the family level, but we do have above family 10s. So examples of that: Psychedelics, Dixicales, and you'll be hearing from Carophyllales later. But we go above that, and we're very pleased that in January we were able to authorise a pteridophyte 10 to include all of the groups within the pteridophytes. And likewise, we have a bryophyte 10. But below the family level, we also have our smaller groups where we have a group of networks wanting to contribute a substantial amount of information, and so these are approved at the supergeneric rank, but with the idea that these will then be included in higher ranked 10s in the future. Sorry, and the full information you can find on the 10s is in the about pages on that link here. So if you're interested in being a member of an existing 10 or want to thinking about setting up a new 10 yourself, then you can go and find out what's already been approved already. The process is that the taxonomic expert networks are approved by the Taxonomic Work Group, the World Flora Online, at the World Flora Online Council, which meets twice a year. So far we've got 49 approved 10s, which cover these headline numbers of families and accepted species. We have about half of families of vascular plants and bryophytes, which are covered by a 10, an approved 10, of which about 45% of accepted species are included. We don't expect that 10s, as soon as they are approved, are contributing data, so there's usually a bit of a time lag there, but we have 38% of accepted names actually being curated by the taxonomic expert networks. And then the 10s in the pipeline here is what Alan put forward last week before we had the start of our symposium or our conference here, and the 10s in the pipeline took that to about 50% of all accepted names covered. I'm delighted to say that the response over the last few days from taxonomic experts and their networks at the IBC have come forward to me and offered up proposals to form 10s or interest in form 10s for a further 10% of species. So we're now up to about 60% if all of those come through, and I'm sure they will do. This is really, really amazing. Just to show some of the diversity of contributions, we've got 670 taxonomies contributing to 10s. Those are spread among 69 countries around the world, and the density of the country colours here reflects the number of taxonomies actually involved in those countries. It's worth mentioning that that's not the nationality of those taxonomies, but where they're currently working. So there are some countries which are coloured in here, which aren't coloured in, such as Turkey, which would be if we had a country of the nationality of those individuals. But there's work to be done. There's more work to be done in Africa and other parts of the world to engage taxonomists there, to be part of TENS, and contribute to the work for online. This is something we're actively doing at the moment. Looking at the way that people are contributing, the way we manage our data, we have we have a software system called Rakis, which we use to manage the taxonomic backbone. We try and make this as simple as possible to promote contributions from taxonomists. We don't want to make it a difficult process. The simpler we can make it, the easier it is to get changes made to the backbone. So we have a very, very simple model of keeping names and information about names in nomenclature separate to the taxonomy and then the references which are used to decide where those names are published and which tax are accepted, kept separate in the reference area. And these are all linked together and pushed out by, we try not to store the data if it's stored somewhere else. There's lots of links out to the web to pull in information, such as nomenclature information, who the people are, publications, type references, and so forth. This is just a screenshot from the Rakis user interface, and this is just to give you an idea of how simple it is. The grey areas are nomenclature information, which is pre-populated from IPNI and the World Chapters of Plants, and the orange or yellow areas are the classification plants. So a lot of terms come in, and they may spot corrections to be fed back to IPNI or the Wi-Fi database, but mostly they're moving names around in the classifications. The second page here is just to show you that there's the kinds of links that we have and the extra information is stored. So the nomenclature references are links out to other databases which provide the data, maybe those are nomenclature databases. And I'm going to look at this is and there are links out to other identifiers which are used by other database resources around the world. So we can, with the WFO, we can link out to the plant list, IPNI, GBIF data, a couple of life, etc., etc. There's also places in here to put in comments about where decisions have been made, which classifications have been followed, which standard references. Generally, this information is stored through links rather than storing the data, so we store the URL to those references, pulling information from those external web resources, such as the thumbnails and the data. These arrows are pointing to references which link to Wikidata. In amongst the nomenclature are on-place names here at the bottom. And this is an encouragement for taxonomic expert networks to place those either in their classification or to reject them and say, well, actually, they're private, or they should be in other families. There are some useful tools in this process to try and help the taxonomic experts curate their data. I'll just point out one of those here on the top line on unplaced names. There's a link to GBIF occurrence data. So if GBIF uses that name as the accepted name for occurrences, then it will give you a tally of how many occurrences there are. So in this case, Morphophallus here is used as the accepted name for 3 GBIF references. Sometimes there's a lot more than that. And so it's a way of prioritising how you clean up the list. New names from IPNI are also brought in on a monthly basis. So all the new names and new edits, if it's unsure where they should go, they'll go into the unplaced names list, ready for the taxonomic expert networks to sort. There is a lot of ancillary data stored in here, which isn't shown on the World Flora portal. It is there to help taxonomists do their job at constructing the classifications. Links to the original literature, the prototypes, links to the type specimens, links to the individuals who are describing those names so you can understand who they are, and also links to other treatments, so in Plaza and so forth. So Rakis is more than just managing classification, it helps you do your research. Just to give some current stats on this ancillary data, I think the headline is the number of names which are linked to their original protologs. So we're up to nearly about 45% of all names in the Rakis system are linked to their protologs. And a good number now are being linked to the type specimens when they're available online, up to nearly 12%. Just to give you an overview of the workflow, Alan Elliott, as the 10 manager, will interact with the taxonomic expert networks and also be the overall editor of the Rakis and Flora platform. The taxonomic expert networks may have their own database system, and you'll hear an example of that from the Lalis, in which case bulk uploads from that will be taken periodically and put into Rakis. Others will be working directly in the Rakis system. Alan is there to help with the bulk edits and the bulk uploads, but also as a user help desk, and he works in tandem with people as they're getting to know how to use the Rakis system. And every 6 months we produce a data release, and that data release goes to provide the WFO plant list update, which has various APIs and tools wrapped around it so it can be used by machines as well as by humans. But we also push the data to Zenodo as a data download, which has full accreditation of those involved, and that also goes to the checklist bank, being used in, or starting to be used in the updates of Catalog of Life. We'll hear from Olaf Franke about that, the last thing in the series. This is Alan's slide about why we chose the solstices. They just happen to be random days, fixed days once every 6 months. And we try to, we stick to this. We don't do this. If Ken's come along and say, oh, I'm not quite ready to give our data, it's well, if you give it to us by a few days before the solstice, we'll include it in it, otherwise you're going to wait 6 months. And actually people are getting into that cycle now, and we're not getting any late submissions. So we release no matter what. And there's a lot of changes so far that are happening. At the moment it's every 6 months because there's a lot of data changes in there. Maybe as in the future things stabilise out, and might drop that down to once a year. But at the moment it's once every 6 months. And just to give you an idea, we have about 40,000 additional names are being brought in every 6 months. About 1 million edits to the whole backbone. So there's a lot of data change at the moment going into the workflow online. And these bar charts show you that incrementally things are getting better with less unplaced names and more names being placed into synonymy. These are just the key parts of the last 4 to 6 month edits, updates. Accreditation is really, really important with the workflow online. We want to give people the credit for the work that they do. That's not only through the main portal, but also these data releases. So there's extensive authorship of the data releases managed through ORCID IDs. So part of this part of WFO, you have your ORCID ID linked here, and you'll be included in all of those 6 month updates. This is the release that goes into Zenodo, and this is the release that is put into the Catalog of Life checklist bank. And of course, there's the release as it appears on the portal. This is my second to last slide. It sort of mirrors the one which Sandra put out in her inaugural lecture to highlight where we're lacking tens. The colours are switched down, so the yellows are ones which we have tens for, but the greens are the ones in the size of the families which we don't have yet tens for. And I'm very pleased to say that some of those really massive ones, there's been expressions of interest over the last few days. So Orchidaceae, Euphorbiaceae, Brassicaceae, and several others. So if you see that you're working in one of those circles, which is either the start, but it's an incremental start to making a consensus classification of these groups. And there's a lot of help there within the World Flora Line family for you to do that. So even if you're really just very tentative, get in touch and we can help you along the way. There's some further information on some leaflets on the site there and some sign-up sheets, and the QR code will link you to the Google form, which will allow you to register interest, and we can stay in touch and keep going with these conversations. So it's just a register interest, it's not a commitment, but please do get in touch. Thank you very much. So open the floor to the questions. Sure.
Is it possible, just for VA, to establish a plan of creating a single man? Is it possible to start a town of a single person town?
The philosophy we have is that we want to have these towns as being as representative of the global taxonomic community working on that group as possible. So we're trying to we need to get as many people who have those opinions and working on it as possible. Now some places there will be just one person, particularly for very small families and things like this. So we're not averse to having an individual, we'll take what we can get. But if one of those does get established and somebody else says, I'd like to join, then that town needs to be open for extra membership. Yes. So, yes, in principle, but we really, really want to have this as a mechanism to build communities. There's been too many examples of the past of one person having their own special database, and that conflicts with other opinions, and also has no sustainability. So, yes, in principle, get in touch, and hopefully we can help them broker with connections that you may not already be aware of. Sure. Anybody else? We are pretty much bang on time. So I'll say thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much. Talking on catching up on plant diversity, the online flora and e-flora event.
Thank you. I was an eager and enthusiast on the Flora of Mexico that I wanted to go before Mark talks. Sorry. So I'm going to present today the online Flora of Mexico. First, I have to say that Mexico is considered a mega diverse country. These are some numbers of species, and Mexico is one of the countries with a diverse flora. Part of the complexity of the flora of Mexico is related with the geographic position that Mexico has, being in the middle of North America and South America with the Central America, so we have a complex topography, many ecosystems, two deserts form part of Mexico, the Chihuahua Desert. The Chihuahua Desert, then the Sonora Desert, and there are some dry habitats in the southern part, in the Cuenca del Balsas and in Chiapas. So that's the reason we have many ecosystems. It's been estimated that the flora of Mexico is about more than 26,000 species of vascular plants, and 40-something of these species are endemic. And they are mostly, the endemic flora of Mexico is mostly found in dry habitats, in dry forests. Here are some examples of the dry habitats of Mexico. On the top on the left And there is this view is from Tehuacan Valley with the columnar cacti. On the right is a cotillo in the Chihuahuan Desert. Here on the left is another cotillo with succulent stems, and there is a rosetta in the last slide. So part of the flora of Mexico is conformed by endemic remarkable taxa like Chelantansi, which is a monotypic family in Mexico, in the Basicales. And Fukeliaceae is almost Mexican. Some species go to the Sonoran Desert in the States. We have also high endemism of Pinus and many cycads. Pinus is represented in the flora for about more than 50 species. In the monocots, the most remarkable are related with agavoid forms, which these genus have been transferred now to agave. We also have nice monocots in the Mila clay. And I have to talk about tequila, about agave. Agave is a large genus in Mexico. Agave tequilana is maybe the most known species. And some other species like agave potatorum and some others are used to extract mezcal also. The Cactaceae is one of the iconic family in Mexico. We don't have only the columnar cacti, but these amazing life forms which grow mostly below the ground, and some life forms are like similar to agave, like the Mercia principles, for example. And the Asteraceae constitute the most diverse group in Mexico. Dahlia is a Mexican group. Dahlia coccinea, which is in the center of this slide, is the national flower. The Burseraceae is another important family in Mexico, the Copales and Burseras, with all these amazing forms and amazing barks. I have to say also that Mexico is a domestication center in which many plants we eat today have been domesticated. Corn, chili, pumpkins, all these plants indicated here. These are the most diverse angiosperm families in Mexico. The Asteraceae by most are the most diverse. Also the legumes, the grasses, the orchids, the euphorbs, the Liliaceae. These are the most diverse families in Mexico. From the 86 large genera in the world, which has been stressed out to be understudied, we have many of them in Mexico. We have, for example, some piper or some peperomia. They are quite diverse in Mexico. Epidendrum also is quite diverse in Mexico. So we have some of these large understudied genera represented in Mexico by many species. Also, I have to say that part of the flora is being, new species are being discovered every year. Like in average, 100 species are described every year. So we have a flora not well studied yet. So the history of the knowledge of the flora of Mexico goes to the first book by Francisco Hernandez, The History of the Plants of New Spain. And many representations of the plants have been included in the Mariano Codex, in many of the codices that conform all the pre-Hispanic knowledge of the plants of Mexico. Up to now, there are several local floras going on. Only a few were finished, like the Sonoran Desert, finished some years before. The flora of the Valley of Mexico also, and some floras are on their way, like the flora mesoamericana, which includes part of the south of Mexico, Flora Veracruz and Flora de Bajío. So there are some local floras going on, but as you can see in the map, many parts of Mexico are not covered by floras. So another thing we have to take into account is that the Mexican Council of Biodiversity, CONABIO, supported many projects with many databases, and so we took advantage of all this knowledge by CONABIO, as we know the Mexican Council of Biodiversity. So we have a preliminary checklist. So having the checklist, having produced by CONABIO, based on more than 5 million specimens in Mexican herbaria, and the support by the Mexican Science Foundation, we decided a couple of years ago to start the Flora of Mexico, the online Flora of Mexico, eFloraMex. And it's now in the portal. We have a transitional checklist with 29,000 names, which has to be, the checklist, the backbone, is being curated right now. We took advantage of the agreement that the Botanical Garden of Berlin and the National University of Mexico have to use the EDIT platform for cyber taxonomy. So we are using the EDIT for the Flora of Mexico. And so we are trying to conform all the information previously published, monographs, floristic work, all the knowledge of all the plants of Mexico, to upload all this information into the portal, and also to produce new taxonomy work for the Flora of Mexico. We have uploaded already several monographs, like in this example of the monograph of Iniciantes in the Solanacea by Lineval. So the Flora of Mexico is going to contain all the parts that usually go into the floras. This is the organization, this is the workflow of Flora of Mexico with an editorial committee. The head is Jesus González Gallegos in the Polytechnic Institute in Durango. We are working closely with the Botanical Garden of Berlin and related to EDIT now. The Mexican Society is also involved in the project, and we have members in the editorial committee from the main herbaria of Mexico. So we have the collaboration right now of 200 Mexican taxonomists. We invited all of them, and we already have 58 taxonomy expert networks, which the first task is going to review the checklist, the backbone, but also some groups have been working for a long time, so they are producing the taxonomic treatments, mainly Lamiaceae or Lauraceae, for example. So we have several networks working already of the most diverse groups in Mexico, like the Lamiaceae, which includes more than 600 species, in which Salvia mexicana chia is very well known. Socorro González from the Polytechnic in Durango is the leader of the group of including Symposia, which includes more than 600 species. The Poasi network is led by Teresa Mejia, and the grasses include more than approximately 1,300 species. The Orchidaceae is one of the most diverse groups, and the Ester group is led by Gerardo Salazar from Mexico, and it's a large family. Here is the number of species, and Epidendrum, one of the largest genus, is already well studied by Eric Haxatek. There's also another group of taxonomists working on the Apocynaceae. The Liliaceae team is the leader is Dr. Perena in the university. Is also another large group of more than 800 species. The Euphorbia
Flora mix with WFO, and is going to be in the Canophyllales, which is the cactaceae is a very important group for Mexico. So we are discussing the terms of collaboration with the WFO, with the Canophyllales, and the link is going to be in the Flores from next week. We already have included in the Flora of Mexico the Telophytes of Mexico, the excellent taxonomic work by Miguel and Smith. We are reviewing the taxonomy, so more than 1,000 species are included in the portal now. We are inspired by collaborative projects like the Flora Brazil, in which almost 1,000 taxonomists participated. So it was a large group, supported, very well organized. Also the work for online, so they are examples of collaborative projects which have inspired us. So is it too late to start a Flora? Are we Mexicans out of our minds starting a Flora in 2022? We think not. We think the same as before club, that Floras are not a thing of the past, but the present. So I think we are going to progress in the Flora of Mexico, in the Flora Mex, with a lot of collaboration from taxonomists all over the world, forming the taxonomic networks, and to invite the students to participate in the Flora. So it's a big task we have in front, and there's an open invitation to participate in the Flora of Mexico, in the Flora Mex. And so, as anybody is interested in the Flora of Mexico, we are open to receive your contributions. And here's my email, you can write to me. And lastly, I want to thank CONACYT for the support of the project, my institution in Ecole, the next environment, the Institute of Biology, and the Botanical Garden of Madrid. Thank you very much.
How did you start off your checklist? Have you got a data set as a baseline that you're working in?
Yeah, we got the information from CONABIO, the Mexican Biodiversity Council. That's the way we started. CONABIO had multiple databases from all sources of projects. So they gave us the initial checklist, which we are working with the backbone. So the first step in the Flora of Mexico is reviewing the backbone, the checklist. Some of the groups, these large groups I was presenting, they already have checklists, so we are incorporating the curated checklist of these groups into the backbone. But the starting point was CONABIO.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Thank you very much for presenting the Flora Mex in such a wonderful way. I would like just to emphasize a couple of the things you mentioned. One of them is our interest in capacity forming, specifically making use of the enormous expertise that we have in different taxonomic experts in different families in different institutions into fostering students, and so that they can continue the learning of knowing the plants and continue transmitting it. And the other thing is, I would just also like to emphasize that the way in which CONABIO eventually got the checklist is by taking data from herbaria. So this data is well curated and checked by taxonomic experts.
Thank you. Please, at the back. At the back. That's good.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I had a question about within the World Flora Online, when you have the taxonomic expert say you have a particular genus in Mexico, I think they have the permissions to edit that genus, right? So I'm wondering how within the World Flora Online system it works when you have a taxonomic expert on a group, but from a particular area. Is that taken into account anyway?
Well, this is going to be the first time we work this way, because the Calophyllales then has the all information for the Calophyllales of the world. So we are implementing a form to get information for the Mexican flora and to Mexican taxonomists participate on this task in the Calophyllales. So it's never done. We are discussing with Dr. Thomas Borch the way we are going to do it.
If I might sort of say something for the World Flora Online perspective, Thomas next. The taxonomic expert networks are delegated responsibility for managing the classification of that variety, so usually at family level. So it's up to that taxonomic expert network how they want to arrange themselves, form a consensus. Within the Reiki system, they can delegate, say one genus only occurs in one country, they can delegate the people from that country just to make those edits directly. So you can cascade the responsibilities down within the 10 as you wish. Yeah, if the genus covers wider areas, then within the taxonomic expert networks, you must arrange how you're going to conduct those conversations and come to decisions. As Marianne said, and Ronaldo, trying to get how to get consensus within a geographical region is sometimes not so easy, but best way is to do it through the consensus within those taxonomic expert networks. Thomas?
Yes. Let me just maybe comment also on what Victoria said and Susanna as well. I think the Calophyllales 10 is, well, before it became a 10, it was actually a joint research project between Instituto de Biología, UNAM, Jalapa, and us in Berlin. And it was sort of a learning exercise because, well, in the digital world, all the workflows, how to do editing, how to do accreditation, there is many new things. And I think the collaboration that we had since 15 years prior to the activities with WFO were very instrumental, and maybe sort of together with the thoughts you had in Edinburgh, forming TENS as a concept arose basically from a Mexican, German, UK, whatever international idea. And so I think that's the way to go. So from an academic perspective, looking how science works, considering, of course, capacitation, but also new methods, and in particular considering that science is approximation. So we don't know everything, and nothing will be ready to our sort of complete happiness before we have to release it, because the environmental sector needs the data now. And I think working in this challenge is very exciting, and also all the way systematics works has to be sort of very integrative, and so it's mutual benefits. So putting more visibility for Mexican colleagues or any other countries' colleagues at the global level, and making this impact, because we need also for the global level the contribution from people from all the countries around the world. I think without that it won't work. So
Thank you,
just
Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you again, Victoria, and the main case in the is to come forward to propose an intent for WFO online. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is continuing on the edit platform with Nadia Kodakova speaking on bridging the phylogeny classification gap at the genus and species level to obtain the best possible taxonomic knowledge in the Campylales 10.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very excited to speak here today and to present what we're doing with the Campylales 10, which I am coordinating. So, just to mention what Campylales are, I guess you may be familiar. It's quite a significant order containing some 6% angiosperms and some 12,000 different species, and it includes important and large and also very interesting families like Cactaceae, Campylales, Plumbaginaceae, some carnivorous families. There's a lot of really ecologically interesting and important families in this order. In the Campylales Taxonomic Expert Network, when it was founded, and that was back in 2012 already, before we became part of the online community, it was really the goal to develop a network to create a community of institutions and also individual scientists and provide a platform for cooperation. And currently we have some 170 contacts, our mailing list, and I have from 36 countries. So the response once we reached out to people was very positive, and people keep also coming in. And there is really everyone is welcome, especially early career researchers. So this is quite a large network. And the aim was to create knowledge synthesis of the Campylales and to have a dynamic and up-to-date curated taxonomic backbone for the order, which had to be research-based. That was important and had to be based on research on phylogenetic taxonomic studies and all the evidence which is available out there. And it had to be a community product that is also visible as such and which gives proper credit to everyone who has contributed. And no matter how small or big the contribution is, everyone who contributes is appropriately cited and credited. So where we are not quite halfway through with compiling backbone for Campylales families. We have 21 families completed. It's not quite half the number of species, and 22 families remaining or in progress. Many are currently in progress, and in the next graph I will break it down what these are. Completed and published through WFO online and also through our own online portal, which I will show in a moment, are Cactaceae and Wyse as the major families, and very recently completed Plumbaginaceae. Currently we are focusing on Campylales, that's the biggest family that is remaining and which is heavily worked on at the moment, and Canopods, Maranaceae, Polymulaceae, that's remaining. And each of these families, they sort of come with their own challenges when you are starting to compile a checklist of a complete family. Cactaceae and Wyse, they are very large families, but they were comparably easy. And in the next slide, I just want to compare. Cactaceae and Campylales, they are very comparable in size and species numbers. Campylales probably slightly more species, but not quite as many names. But I have coordinated and led the Cactaceae checklist, and I was actually surprised. Well, it wasn't easy, but it was very doable. And it was very doable because for Cactaceae, the basis is just so excellent because they're such a popular family, and there has been a lot of literature done on Cactaceae, several lexicographic treatments, monographs, starting with the late 19th century and then the 1920s. First major monograph having all the old names already sorted out. Plus, most Cactaceae genera are small, and that allowed phylogenetic studies to sample them completely, which is just an excellent basis. We'll just go to the next slide to show you just how well the basis is. For 21 genera, there's even a phylogeny-based synopsis available. And for the most Paraphylaceae doesn't look quite like that. For most genera, there is no comprehensive treatment, no monographic treatment. There are floristic treatments, and then Paraphylaceae contain all these large and complex genera like Cerastium and Silene, which are just so large that no single person could even study and monograph them. Plus, the project studies have been really incomplete in sampling, and most genera are still ill-defined and probably also non-monophyletic. So that's coming back to Cactaceae. That's one of my favorite slides. So Cactaceae, about 2,000 species, but 23,000 plus names. And this comes from the many synonyms of Cactaceae. And I have put together 3 species with the most synonyms. So in the third place, Alostra that's a very tiny cactus from the Andes, Bolivia. And this is what you may find in supermarkets, these tiny pots of flowers. That's this thing. Then Melocactus macropanthus has been described very thoroughly and contains 124 groups of synonyms. And then first place, again, Alostra, 256 synonyms in total. So I don't know what actually would be interesting to find out what the species would be which has the most synonyms in total of all the angiosperms. But this was very impressive, like a lengthy list of synonyms. So that's the challenge for Cactaceae, but actually many synonyms are homotypic, so they're easily to sort out, and they just arise because species have been moved from one genus to another, but now with the phylogenetic backbones we have, we know which genes, which species should go. In Paraphylaceae, that's not quite the same, so let's take Arenaria as an example. It used to be a genus of some 300 species, and as the results of phylogenetic studies, namely by Sadegian et al., Arenaria has been split in 5 genera, like smaller genera, and only some 130 species remain in Arenaria. The problem is that actually not all species have been sampled and that the gaps are quite big, so of the presumably 35 species in Arenaria, only 56 have been included in that analysis, and they were born in only 38. So what to do with the species which have not been sampled, if you already know genera may not be as they have been traditionally defined, and if I want to start compiling a checklist of Arenaria, what to do with the species that have not been sampled. So that's exactly the challenge. We want to integrate the available phylogenetic knowledge, but there are so huge gaps that we can't really do that in the way it needs to be done. That's the challenge, and that's then up to the experts for these groups to find a way around that and to integrate the phylogenetic knowledge that is there, but then to also produce a useful treatment which sort of reflects what is known on that group. And we don't have a really good solution for that, so we have been discussing this a lot, what to do, and this has to be done for each genus individually. We use also the EDIT platform for cyber taxonomy. It's developed and hosted in Berlin by a team of few but very motivated developers. And it's a very comprehensive and open access set of tools, basically for everything the taxonomists need for their work. This is covered by the EDIT platform. It has a module for taxonomic editing. It can handle specimen data. It has maps built in. It has also plugins for making keys and descriptions and even structured descriptions. And then we publish everything through web and print. This is just a screenshot how the software looks like. It's very comfortable to use. We have the taxonomic navigation as a tree. We have a window to edit the names. Then there's all kinds of what we call factual data that can be attached to a taxon, to an accepted taxon, which can be a description, a diagnosis, a distribution area, etymology, any kind of index information can be attached. The platform is completely flexible in this regard. Also types, specimens, and what we also always include are the online IDs, very often also the EP IDs, and we can also include any other IDs from the original WFO online backbone or the QRO checklist, because some names may be covered in one or the other. And they come with conditional classification as accepted data or as a synonym, but this needs to be revised. And this is where expert revision comes in, or if there is no expert, there may be people just compiling and still revising what was originally in the WFO online backbone. And we use the concept of the so-called Secundum references, and I know that most may not be familiar with that, so I'll just explain what it is. Secundum means according to, and the Secundum references is a source that defines a particular taxon concept or a circumscription. It's obviously different literature references, different authors may use the name differently. A Secundum references specifies the source for that concept and distinguishes different taxonomic concepts for the same taxon name in databases. So originally it was not a concept used in taxonomy, but rather in biodiversity informatics and databases and data modeling, which would allow to handle exactly that. And it's not the same as accepted by, because they have very different purposes. Secundum references is actually meant to be flexible and to allow multiple definitions of the same taxon name, also allowing it to attach data to a certain taxon name. An accepted by reference, on the other hand, reflects some sort of consensus view and would need a naming source if you want to attach data under a different name. And the purpose here is rather to standardize, to have certain sources to follow. So if you look at our portals, also our publications from the Curricularis 10, how you have to read that is it's accepted in that particular publication from the Curricularis 10, and the taxon concept is based on a reference which is a Secundum reference. And I know it's a bit confusing. I hope I did my best to explain it. So after expert revision is done, people can either work in our database directly or can also work with a Word output depending on what they prefer. At the very end, we assign the WFO IDs and import that data into WFO. And from then on, we do periodic updates, usually annually, depending how much changes. INALS makes no changes in backlist directly, so we don't need to re-import that often. But we keep that content up to date. And any information that is updated in our database goes live into our portal right away. And let me show you how this looks on our system. It's an example from Wyse, that's a cactus. This contains nomenclature information, a taxonomic discussion note, distribution map on country level. We have maps for few taxa, but that's to come. And here's a description. And for all this information which we have in the database, we have very detailed bibliographical references. Then both portals are cross-linked. So each name has a WFO ID displayed on the portal, and clicking on the ID will take you to the WFO portal. You will see this is a record from Curricularis.org, and if you scroll down taxon name, source, link, you will find a backlink to our portal. And what we also do, besides publishing our treatments online, we have published now a whole series of data papers, starting with a genetic checklist of Curricularis, which came out in 2015. That's where things really kicked off. Has so far over 100 citations and counting, and for all the authors of that paper, it's their most cited paper by far. The Cactaceae checklist came out in 2021, will hit 100 citations soon. So these publications actually do have an impact. People thought maybe taxonomy papers have no impact, and I decided it's actually not true. They are very, very much cited, and this also shows that they are really needed. That was my final slide. Of course, I did not do that alone. We have a team in Berlin and a lot of people who have been helping in various ways. I have not listed all the participants of the Curricularis 10, it would be just too many, so I just have to thank everyone, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank
Thanks, Nadia, for this very informative overview of your work in Vietnam. I just wonder, how can we ever have completed cactaceae? How do you treat new information and updates?
Once new information comes out, I input it into the database, or now it's actually me and a few other colleagues who can edit the database directly. So new species that I described are then added to the database, or new phylogenetic studies or new treatments are also worked into the database. So yes, of course, it's constant editing. Yes, I try to keep it really up to date, and once new literature comes available, to really put it in as soon as possible, and it goes online as soon as it's in the database.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi. It's not a question, it's just I couldn't resist doing a query when you said which angiosperm species have the largest number of synonyms. And of course it's the dog rose, about 1100, Rosa canina, and then Solanum tuberosum with about 826. That's the current thing. Then they quickly fall down. There seem to be loads with about 364, and sorghum and rose and mint, and so. But there seems to be a table of about 300. Mm-hmm. If you're up in the 300s, then you've got lots of synonyms.
Maybe link to that note, I have a question on how you involve enthusiasts
Good question.
in your decision making. Many enthusiasts, particularly cactaceae and Symposia and outside Caprolalis, which cause some headaches to taxonomists. And how do you involve them in your decision making process?
So for Nepenthes, we tried to get them on board and failed. They had no interest to participate for whatever reason. For Cactaceae, I was really afraid that the enthusiasts would this is all, not what we want. But actually the response has been very positive, and many enthusiasts have also sent me corrections or whatever hints. There's some which we don't involve for various reasons, because the way they publish is not ethical. But and this is so we have to we can only involve people which do amateur work, which are amateurs, publish what they publish to some sort of standard. If they just publish alone in a known journal, which they edit and just make combinations of plants they've never seen based on one of others, that's not what we want to include. It's a problem how we deal with that, because that also creates for Cactaceae a lot of nomenclatural clutter. But in general, the response from amateurs or enthusiasts has been quite positive, and I also find that they are really very welcome to contribute, that we have certain standards that just need to be there, and they're welcome to contribute.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you for your talk. And our last talk of this session is from Olaf Franke, a couple of slides. And Olaf is going to speak on capital of life and the need for a global consensus classification for plants.
Right. Thanks everybody for being here and for the invitation to talk. Catalog of Life is a member of the World Flora Online Consortium, and for quite so many years we are working together to come to one consensus classification for plants. Now, Catalog of Life, if you don't know it, it's been around already for about 28 years. We're recognized as a global core biodata resource, and we cover all life on Earth, so making one global species list, and have about 2.1 million accepted species at the moment. For plants, we have around 384,000 accepted species and a little bit over 1,000 families, and a few fossil species so there are several sources that underpin the catalog of life at the moment. Two of those sources really cover most of the information. Those are World Plants by Michael Hessler, and it's the World Checklist of Vascular Plants led by Raphael Govaert. And then Brian Ames, Biophyte Information, and Legu Phylogeny Working Group are covering about 10%. Now, I'm not sure it's just visible. It's not so visible here, actually. So, together with GWF, we have been constructing a new infrastructure called Checklist Pane. It's basically an open data publishing platform for taxonomic, nomenclatural data, and all kinds of species lists. Now, what this infrastructure also has is all the tooling for us to assemble the catalog of life out of data sources that are mediated and published in Checklist Pane. And at present, on a monthly basis, we make the catalog of life out of that, and that contributes to the GDF backbone taxonomy. However, we are aware that the current catalog of life has a lot of gaps. We have a lot of synonyms are missing. For example, we don't always have recently described species. We don't connect to OTUs or bin codes or barcode sequence information, and we also miss a lot of fossil taxa. This is in general, so not only for plants, but also for zoology and other life form things. So what are we doing right now with GWF? We're making what we call an extended release of the catalog of life. We're actually picking up more sources, more data sets from published literature or from regional lists or non-global lists, and trying to add to the tree that we have any accepted species, synonyms or references. And we're pretty close with that process. We're testing that right now, and we hope in a few months that we are able to publish this really publicly, and that it will be used by GWF as its main backbone taxonomy. So if we're looking at this extended release, and these are the numbers that are say more or less bold and in a different color, you can see that it's adding about 101 families to the plants data that we have in Catalog of Life, and about 35,000 accepted species. I have to say, these data are very preliminary. They need to be scrutinized, so please take this as a work in progress. We are also adding some fossil information, but most of all, a lot of synonyms. So above 400,000 names that we didn't have. So we are also connecting now to World Flora Online, or really starting to pick up sources that are coming from the 10 community, like the Pinopsida. We're integrating that into the Catalog of Life, and in this new extended release process of the Catalog of Life, World Flora Online is adding about 108,000 names to contact data. These are slightly over 12,500 accepted names. Now, what WFO is also adding to existing sources is additional synonyms and actually references. So this is really useful. Now, we're also working together with other partners like Wyse and Pensoft to get data from scientific papers, get that into checklist bank and get it then contributing to the Catalog of Life. And this is just an example of a new tree species from China. So we are picking up a little bit over 51,000 data sets, so each scientific paper is a data set, and we're scrutinizing that, and about 21,000 of those data sources at present are contributing names to the Catalog of Life. But if we go down to the plant data, then only 100 papers are actually producing additional names to the plant data in Catalog of Life, and these result in about 1,000 names. But they do contribute to new species like this species alien from Turkey. Now, if you look at that reference, you this is Platin here, the data. You can actually go back to the original publication, or you can go back to the treatment bank, which is the infrastructure of Platin where the data is at. And we still need to close some gaps in plants. Actually, we are doing pretty well together, but algae names are missing. We also still miss a lot of fossil taxa and a lot of synonyms and references. And most of all, we would like to also include barcode or sequence information. So if we look at Unite, which is an initiative that is more focusing on fungi, we can actually see that that initiative is producing some green algae information of flora feature. And we are also on fungi, I say, including a lot of species hypotheses there. With Barcode of Life, we can also see that quite some information, ITS and NetK, for example, is coming in through GenBank, through Barcode of Life to Checklist Bank, entering into the Catalog of Life right now. And again, about 1,000 accepted species are coming in from red algae in this case. So you can see that if we are trying to extend the current taxonomic data that we get in from taxonomic communities with other data sources, we are actually capable of adding some new information, etc. Like I said, this of course is very preliminary, so it needs to be far more scrutinized, but it just shows you what we can do if we start to connect different databases and different infrastructures together. Now, what's our take-home message here? Of course, we need to continue harmonizing the existing taxonomic plant lists that are out there. World Flora Online is doing a tremendous job there in building taxonomic communities. So I'm pretty positive that in the next few years we are capable of really harmonizing the other data sources that are out there. I'm really optimistic about that. And an important take-home message here is as well is how well this plant data is already organized. Because I was actually expecting that from digitized papers, we would get far more species names involved. So it might be that we need to work together to get more botanical literature out, but it also shows that actually the goal of World Flora Online to build taxonomic communities around taxonomic sectors is a really good goal, and we're a strong supporter of that. And the last message is that Catalog of Life and GBIF, we are working really to extend also the plant data in Catalog of Life with additional sources. This is work in progress, and once we have something online, please look at it and help us scrutinize those data. It is really important, like some other people have already said. This is not only for science. Our data is being used by different conventions, like the Convention on Biological Diversity. It is, I would say, going into policy from European Environmental Agency, for example. So be aware that although your data might be generated in a scientific context, actually through initiatives like Flora Online, Catalog of Life, and GBIF, it gets out to a hell of a lot of other users. And I think this is pretty important as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just open the floor to questions. At the back there, and then at the front.
It's going to take too long. I'll shout. So about the last slide, it felt like there's a very big difference between all the names level data you've been talking about to that point. Something comes in all this specimen level, the session level data, linked to, for example, DNA sequences.
Yeah, I've done all that.
Can you tell me about this link and how and what the challenges, additional challenges, different kind of challenges that come when you make these kind of links?
Okay, pretty difficult question, so I'll try, and if I'm not answering correctly, then please come again. So what we're trying to do is actually get all the names, and in a lot of cases, as Mark has been shown, there are links already with specimens, but in some cases there are really not. So that's what we are trying to establish. Actually also rows of homotypic synonymy, but with Unite and Barcode of Life, the challenge is that we get unranked. So sometimes we get species hypotheses in, and so they're not always connected to a binomial, but they are considered to be an explicit taxonomic group. And with Barcode of Life, we are only pulling data that is attached to a binomial, right? Just to be clear.
One quick, maybe more explicit kind of follow-up. What, as researchers, can we do then to make sure that all of our specimen level data is correctly linked up in terms of providing resources when we're publishing this information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, first of all, it would be really helpful to get also specimen data up into repositories like GBIF, but I also realized that there is some standard work that needs to be done to really reflect them correctly. But that would be my first take but maybe the publisher consortium has also something to say about that, because I think Penselton and Platzi and European Journal of Taxonomy are also promoting much more how you can publish your data correctly so that it's being picked up. But making it available to existing, I'd say, global repositories with those data would really help.
Thank you. Question to front.
I would like to ask you actually a thing around the taxon concepts. So you showed like a new species be published, and what we all know is that the scrutiny of new species publications varies. So many of them don't have really comparative data. Many of them still don't have molecular data, although it would be really nice specimen at least has some sequences connected to it in order to place it in particular in the species-rich genera. So at the end of the day, when you showed this, who is sort of making sure that the name which was published is really a good species, and there is some kind of opinion of the community, which 10 would do in the context of World for Online. So how do you manage this in Catalog of Life? That's the first question. And the second is, sequences. This is even more complex because not every plant species is monophyletic, as we have heard also in various Symposia, apomixis and paraphyletic species-plant speciation mechanisms are very complex, and it can be a valid species, although it's not monophyletic, so the assignment of sequences will also be depending upon very explicit taxon concepts, which again requires specialists. So how do you account for that?
Thanks. Those are really good questions. So traditionally, Catalog of Life has been working with the concept of global species databases. It was sort of similar in the 10s, but not always these were, real communities. So in some cases, these are also individuals that look at publications, for example, and in other cases, there are real communities that look at the data. But this is something that we, with this new process, we need to, I would say, test out, and we are inviting our own community as well to start looking at this extension and whether data is actually accurate there, yes or not. So this is a real issue that we need to move to taxonomic communities that take more ownership of parts of our classification tree. Yeah? And the second question was again about the sequences, like it's, that would be similar, I think. We are not including necessarily things that don't have a binomial, so they need to have a binomial name, so we can place them in the classification. And if that isn't there, then it's much harder, unless there is, like in Unite, a clear understanding what is a taxon, so the species hypothesis associated with it. But we are actually in need of other initiatives, like, for example, Open Tree of Life, to deal with things that are unplaced, etc., etc. Does that answer your question? More or less, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. We've run out of time now, so I'd just like to thank Ola and the other presenters for their insightful and entertaining I'd just like to announce that these talks will be written up in a special issue of Taxon on the World Flora Online, so please look out for that. And please, being a stranger, sign up, keep informed, keep involved with World for Online, sign up with the sheets and the QR code, and please take a leaf. Enjoy the rest of the